Well, good morning, friends and family here at the Bridge. For those in this room and those who are hanging out with us online, my name is Boone, for those who don't know, and I'm one of the pastors, and I'm excited. I'm grateful to have you all here with us today. We want you to know, each and every person here and each and every person watching, that your presence with us is truly appreciated, and we really, really sincerely hope that your time here today is fulfilling. Doesn't matter your beliefs, doesn't matter your background. If you disagree with us on how we read the Bible, or if you disagree with us of our approach toward following Jesus, that's perfectly okay. And if you wouldn't even consider yourself to be a religious person at all, we want you to know that you are welcome in this community. We say it all the time because we mean it. We want this place to be forever a safe place for people who are struggling with life, struggling with faith, struggling in relationships. We want people who are skeptical about what they believe, what they used to believe, and how it all applies to where they are in their life right now. We want you to know that this is a safe place for you. We won't always have the answers, but we will together, prayerfully and patiently, an honest, open dialogue walk with you through some of life's most difficult challenges and through some of the things that bring us uncertainty. And as we're now entering what is called Advent season, this is this period of anticipation and reflection that leads to Christmas. This is something that Christians, people who are following Jesus all around the world across different denominations, are celebrating to commemorate the historical connections, the reality that Jesus came to us as a gift and that he is coming back to us again. And when he returns, he will restore all things. This is a reminder that what we celebrate is bigger than just what's taking place in this room, bigger than just what's taking place in Ferguson, bigger than just what's taking place in the church in America. Churches all over the world are participating in this season as well. This is a reminder for us of the significance of Jesus' first coming, and it allows us, it invites us to both celebrate his birth as we, with eager anticipation, wait for his promised return, which gives us all hope. And to help guide us through these discussions over the next few weeks, we're going to be delving into a part of God's story where we get what many believe is the very first actual Christmas song. It is a song sung by Mary, the mother of Jesus, while yet she was still pregnant and Jesus was still being formed and growing on the inside of her. She wrote and sang this song. And we'll be looking at that. And it's recorded in Luke chapter 1. And as Luke was writing the story to the early Christians, these Jewish and this Gentile, this diverse group of people, it's recorded what we believe is the first song. It's a beautiful song. It's a poetic song. And remember, this is the song. This would have been maybe Jesus' first lullaby, hearing his mother sing that while he was being formed inside of her. And so throughout the coming weeks, we're going to be exploring different parts of this song. We're looking at mercy and hope and love. And more than anything, we'll see how Jesus does things. And they often don't line up with the ways that we expect him to move and expect for him to work. Here we see Jesus yet again blowing up all of the cultural categories of his day that we believe also blows up the cultural categories of our day as well. And when we're thinking about this song, we got to remember this, and we have to be honest. And again, this is a safe place for us to be struggling. It's a safe place for us to be skeptical. We might find ourselves questioning whether this really happened. We might find ourselves questioning whether God really can use everyday people, just like Mary, just like the neighborhood Mary was from. Could God really use ordinary, everyday, average people? Could God really choose them to make a huge impact on the world and generations to come? And that leads to us doubting our own capacity, doubting that God can use us. With our broken past, our shady past, the things that have happened to us, the way we've been hurt, the way we've been wronged, and the wrong and the pain that we've caused others can cause us to doubt whether or not God will even use us. But before we get to that, I want to ask you all, just for a little bit of family participation, and I want to ask you this question. Before the big question, I want to ask you this question. What is your favorite Christmas song of all time? You only got about 5 seconds. Favorite Christmas? Temptations Christmas song? What else? Silent Night? This Christmas? First Noel? Joy to the World? Santa Claus is coming to town. Okay, all right, okay. All right, we get it. All right, y'all. Now y'all getting in the Christmas spirit. All right. I want to give you all a list. Now, I don't know how accurate this list is. I got it from the smartest person I know, Google. And so here's the list of what is considered to be the top 10 Christmas songs of all time. These are the songs that hit the Billboard. The top 10 of all time. Coming in at number 10, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by Gene Autry. And clap if you know the song, okay. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, Judy Garland. Oh. White Christmas, Bing Crosby. Winter Wonderland, Johnny Mathis. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, Brenda Lee. Okay, now we're at number 5. It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year, Andy Williams. I'm being honest, I didn't know some of these songs, to be honest with you. Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Dean Martin. Okay. Jingle Bell Rock, Bobby Helms. The Christmas Song by Nat King Cole. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Or TCS. See, TCS ain't hear that. Oh, they almost got recruited, y'all. See, TC need to be here. You never know when the Lord's going to move. That sounded good. I impressed myself. And then number 1. Who can guess the number 1 Billboard number 1 song? That's it. All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. That is actually the number 1 Christmas song that ever hit the Billboard. Now, what's impressive about this list? First of all, there's some amazing songs, and I know I've seen some generations being awakened as we were listing some of the songs. But if we just take one step back, there's one slight critique of this list, if y'all don't mind. None of these songs mention Jesus. None of them talk about the reason why supposedly we celebrate in the first place. A good list, but none of these songs mention Jesus. Today, for the rest of our time together, we will be looking at a song that's all about the Christmas story. Again, this is Mary singing this song as she was pregnant with Jesus and she was celebrating. And before we go to the song from Mary, we're going to ask this question together, and we'll try to answer it with the story in Luke. How does the Christmas story? We hear a lot about Christmas. We all feel good. I'm sure your homes are beginning to look like our homes. Lights, it looks nice, it smells nice, all of that. But how does the Christmas story challenge us to reimagine our stories? How does the Christmas story challenge us to reimagine our stories? And before we go to the text, in Luke, that's where we're going, chapter 1, verses 46 through 56, we got to remember that the Christmas story is not merely a historical event. It is an historical event. We believe, some of us believe, in this room, and some of us believe that watching, this is an historical event that actually took place somewhere in the Middle East thousands of years ago. But this timeless narrative challenges us. It challenges us to reevaluate our own lives and the impact that we can have, that God is inviting us to be a part of, as we are called individually and collectively to be a part of transformational change in the world around us. So let's just pick up right here this song that this young girl is singing in Luke chapter 1, verse 46 through 56. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. For he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on, all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his offspring forever." And so again, we ask the question, how does the Christmas story challenge us to reimagine our own stories? And the first observation I believe that is clear to me from the text is that God, in his holiness, in his justice, God empowers everyday people to become instruments of transformation. Here in this text, we see God empowers everyday people to become instruments of transformation. We got to remember that this story was recorded not in 21st century America, but rather thousands of years ago in the Middle East. God had came to Mary, in her own words, in her humble estate, and he said that he was going to bless her in a way that every generation would call her blessed. Now, we got to just remember for a moment what this would have meant for Mary. First of all, Mary was pregnant, and Mary was a virgin. That was a problem. That was a problem 2,000 years ago. And guess what? That's a problem today. If your teenage daughter comes home to you and she's saying that she's pregnant and yet still a virgin, I'm sure there's going to be a problem. Some generations, some contexts, it's going to be what we call some furniture moving. Right? Mary was engaged. So she's pregnant. She had never had a relationship, a physical relationship with the person she was engaged to. That was a problem 2,000 years ago. Guess what? That's a problem today. And so here, this young girl who was pregnant, who was engaged, would have had to go home and tell her people, her guy, Joseph, the guy she was engaged to, his people, the story about her being pregnant. And she would have said something like this: "I'm pregnant." I'm like, "This is impossible. You're a disgrace. You're just," she's like, "No, but y'all don't get it. I'm pregnant by God." And I can imagine things would have got worse really quickly. Because she was an average, everyday person. And if one could believe that God was working in miraculous ways in that way, why wouldn't he have shown up upon the daughter of someone who was rich? someone who was famous, someone who had influence, someone who had authority. Why wouldn't he showed up to one of the daughters of Caesar? Why wouldn't he shown up to one of the daughters of those who were in religious power of the day? Could have been a Pharisee, a Sadducee. Could have been in the scene. It could have been from the Herod's dynasty. Why did he choose this girl that pretty much no one knows anything else about? Her mom isn't mentioned. Her dad isn't mentioned. The only other person in her family mentioned is Elizabeth, her cousin, who also was pregnant at the same time with John the Baptist. And so we see here, if you look with me right there in verses number 46 through 48, it says that my soul magnifies the Lord and the spirit rejoices, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. But then she goes on to say, for he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. So here she is acknowledging that God is looking upon her. God is empowering just an everyday average girl in the Middle East to do something mighty. And then let's stop there. And she goes on to say something. She now is reimagining her own story, her own future. She's reimagining this everyday girl, this average everyday girl from around the way in the Middle East at that time. She's now reimagining her own story. And she says something that would have been almost impossible. It would have probably sounded crazy to most of those who were close to her. And she says, and from now on, all generations are going to call me blessed. She knew that as an average, everyday, ordinary person, God had chosen her to do something special, something amazing, something transformational. And she was singing this song in her heart, and she was saying that the world one day in every generation will call me blessed. And I know it can be hard for us, and we struggle because we're thinking, but what about me? Wow, how is God showing up in my life? How is God showing up in my story? I understand what he did for Mary. If you can believe, I know it's hard for some to believe that a virgin was pregnant, but for those of us who can, if you can believe, you may still have the question, well, where and how is God showing up in my story? I'm reminded of a story that was all over the news years ago of a young lady who was called the most famous teenager in the world at the time. It was a girl who lived in Swat Valley, Pakistan. She lived during the time when the Taliban was the biggest threat to the world. They were considered to be the biggest terrorist group in the world at the time. And in her community, in her town, one of the things that the Taliban did was they revoked all girls' access to education. It became illegal and outlawed, punishable by death for educated girls in Pakistan. And so right here in Swat Valley, Pakistan, this young girl did what was unheard of, what was unexpected, what was unbelievable. This everyday average girl, Muslim girl in Pakistan, decided that she was going to do something that the men didn't have the heart to do. The religious leaders in her area didn't have the heart to do. Those who were in governmental authority didn't have the heart to do. She defied the Taliban. She continued to not only pursue an education for herself and others, but she advocated and she got a voice on the world stage that led up to the Taliban attempting to assassinate this teenage girl. They shot her in the head and she lived to go on to become what was known as the most influential teenager in the world. Her name is Malala Yousafzai. And this is something that she said. This young girl who was shot in the head simply for pursuing education and academic opportunities against the Taliban, which was the most dangerous terrorist organization in the world at this time. She knew something that I think that we can learn from. And I know you're saying, but when we're not Muslim, that's fine, but we believe that all truth is God's truth. right? If it's true, God is the author of it. So we believe that all truth is God's truth. And here's what she said that I believe is true. And it highlights how God uses everyday people, how he empowers everyday people to become instruments of transformational change. And this is what he said. This is what she said, I'm sorry. One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world. Now, you may be asking, well, what does that have to do with us way over here in America? It is because the stance that she took, it began to shine a spotlight into every culture on the world. And everybody had to investigate and look closely at where and how they were denying women access in education, in medicine, professionally, and otherwise. And so women far from Pakistan, women that aren't Muslim, women who would identify as Christian, all over the world benefited from the courage and the tenacity of this teenage girl that I believe God used to help bring transformation and bring hope and healing to one of the most dangerous parts of the world. And I understand some may struggle with how this connects to Jesus, and how this connects to Advent, how this connects to a virgin birth. Are we supposed to really expect to believe in a virgin birth? I know that we need to create space, and we hope to create space and respect for those who have skepticism, honest skepticism, that is. And we also need to explore not only how God uses or empowers everyday people for transformational change, but also how the same God, he doesn't stop there. He also invites us to share in a legacy of mercy. So God invites us to share in a legacy of mercy. Right here in verse number 50, he says, and his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. So thousands of years removed, generations removed, we are recipients. We are now the beneficiaries of God's grace, and how God in that time, in that moment in history, chose Mary to be the mother of Jesus, and how he invited her and he invites us all to share in that legacy. And so we're asking, how does the Christmas story help us reimagine our stories? Because it is this reminder that God has invited us to share in his legacy of mercy. It's a reminder that as we celebrate Christmas, we are celebrating the coming of a king who lived on earth, who died, who rose again, who we now believe reigns in our very hearts. And as we are recipients of his grace, beneficiaries of this mercy, we are now also a part of extending the same mercy to others. There's another lady from Kenya. She was the first woman from Kenya, maybe I believe from Africa, to ever earn a Nobel Peace Prize. She didn't start school till she was 8 years old, but she excelled. She became educated, even came over here to the States to get her undergrad and her master's degree before later going back to Africa, earning her PhD. Growing up in Kenya, one of the things that fascinated her and amazed her was the beautiful, lush fig trees of her community. These fig trees provided shade, they provided beauty, and they also were a very important part to the ecosystem of the entire region. And what happened, just like what happens in other parts of the world, developers came in, they began to cut down over trees, they went too far, as they normally do, and they ended up leaving Kenya in a place where where once was lush and production and beauty and trees and gardening and all of those things, it was a barren land, and people were starving to death. And so what she had was this brilliant idea just to go back to Kenya, to that same neighborhood, and just start planting trees. It may seem insignificant. She may have seemed like an insignificant person, but what she did was she went and she planted trees. Now, years later, 50 million trees later, the area in the community was completely, totally revitalized simply because of the trees. And it not only created trees for shade and for beauty, but it also created an opportunity for women to be educated, for women to have an opportunity to earn money. And it provided so much for that community that it changed the world, changed their world forever, for generations and generations and generations. And this is what she said, this woman, everyday woman, who simply wanted to try to make a difference and simply planted trees. This is what she said in one of her interviews, talking about why did she do it? Did she ever think it would get this big? Did she ever think the whole world would take notice and get involved? This is what she said. We plant the seeds. It was simple for her. We plant the seeds that will provide shade for future generations. It was that simple for her. She knew that the planting of just trees would one day, long after her death, she's gone now. She's transitioned. She was a believer. We believe she's now with the Lord and with the Lord. She's transitioned on, but these trees are still providing life and opportunity for generations and generations and generations. What I love about this quote is it captures that not only the essence of her word, but she had this deep belief that her actions, that our actions, the things we do, the small everyday decisions we do, have a profound impact on the future and for those that are coming behind us. Now, I know I'm way over time. Just bear with me just for a second because we're at the close. So if TC and them walk to the stage, I'm gonna fly through this. Each week we like to think about how do we apply what we're learning to our everyday lives, to our lived experience. How does what we learn on Sundays impact or have any effect on what takes place in our life Mondays through Saturdays? And so we remember as we're thinking about this Christmas story, and we'll be in this song all month long, let us continue to go back to the humble beginnings of ordinary people just like Mary, and how that is supposed to challenge us to reimagine our own stories in light of the Christmas story. And so the first thing I want to ask that we should consider doing is reflecting on your story. Sometimes that's what we simply need to do is just look back. And if we look back, with intention, we can begin to see how in our life, average, everyday, ordinary people showed up for us. How they made the difference in our lives. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a counselor, maybe it was an aunt or uncle or a parent. But you got to think about the impact that people have had on your life. And if we reflect on our stories and we're careful, we can also even begin to see the ways that we have made a positive impact on the lives of others. So one thing we need to do is we need to be reflecting on our story. What does the Christmas story, how does that challenge us to reimagine our own stories? Another thing I think we should do is we need to reimagine your significance. Sometimes you've been told that you'll never get out, you'll never be better, you'll never get over it, you'll never be happy, you'll never remarry. We have these beliefs and these things that we're hearing, and we need to learn how to reimagine our own significance and how God has called you, God has chosen you, God has handpicked you to be a part of transforming the world forever through the power of His might. And so we need to be reimagining our own significance. We need to not only reimagine our own significance, we need to know that we matter to God. God sees us, God hears us, and God loves us. Regardless of our history, regardless of what we've been through, and regardless of the things we've done or said. And another thing we need to do is we need to begin to also. Christmas is a time for dreaming. And so we get to reimagine our potential. Reimagine the impact that we can have on our families, on our communities, and our churches. not for our own good, not for our own recognition, but for God's glory and for that which is good for everybody and everything we come in contact with. And then we also need to, this is one that's going to require a little bit more work. It's a little bit more challenging because we've all been shaped by our experience. We all have been shaped by the things we've done and the things that's happened to us. We're all shaped around the news that's going on around us in the world, and it's always bad. We also need to reimagine our own outlook, your own perspective. We need to submit our own perspectives, our own prejudice, our own outlooks. We need to submit those to the authority of Jesus. And as we prepare our hearts and our minds to continue to celebrate with each other and at home the Christmas holidays, and as we are preparing our hearts and our minds right now to do what we do every single week, is come before the Lord's table and to come together with a time for us to repent, a time for us to remember God's faithfulness, and a time for some of us to renew our covenant relationship with Him. We need to remember that God has empowered us, and God has empowered us to be able to be instruments of transformation, and He has invited us to share into His legacy of mercy. But we can debate what's our favorite Christmas song. One thing that we cannot debate is what is the greatest Christmas gift ever given. And we believe that that gift is Jesus. Another writer wrote that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, so that whoever believes on Him, believes in Him, will not perish, but will have life everlasting. And it goes on to say something else that we often forget. And God did not send His Son to condemn the world, but through Him that the world might be saved. And so as we receive the greatest gift that is ever given, let us be reminded that this is a gift that we get that doesn't come with condemnation. And for those who are here today, you may be struggling, you may be skeptical, you really don't know where you are with Jesus. As we come before this table, we want to honor you. We want you to know that it is okay for you to be where you are today. And it is okay for you not to partake in the Lord's Supper with us. But we still think that you are a valuable part of our community, and we invite you to hang out and eat another meal with us a little bit later, right after the service. But as you come during this next song and you get your elements, be thinking about how does the Christmas story challenge you to reimagine your own stories. Today we won't have people come up for prayer just because the infection rate of flu and sickness and that stuff is kind of high. But we are praying for you, and we will receive your prayer requests. Just know that. So after this song, Pastor Nathan will